a city official to sign. And the options are the council approve the following: to have the authorities for airports capital assistance program fundings agreement and project. It's the mayor and or city manager and the city manager's designate, or that the council requests further information. The alignment of the strategic plan is this item is aligned with the following strategic areas: sustainable fiscal strategy to comply with the ACAP funding requirements. Council is required to pass a resolution providing the signing authorities. And in the future, this resolution would still hold if we receive future ACAP funding. So we wouldn't have to make this resolution a second time. Back to you, Your Worship.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, in order for us to receive funding in the future, this piece needs to be in place, and we have to have a resolution saying we're signing it.
In order to finalize our ACAP funding for the project that we just completed at the airport for the runway, we require this, but this would also look forward for any future ACAP funding meet those requirements as well.
Okay. Any questions? Well done. Motion? Councilman Monroe?
The council approved the following to have signing authorities of the airport's capital assistance program, ACAP funding agreement, and project mayor and or city manager or the city manager's designate.
Second. Councilor Biden? Any questions?
Just a question on, we have the city manager and city manager's designate. Should we have mayor or mayor's designate there as well, just in case of deputy mayor or acting mayor position at that time?
The charter provides a lineage for the mayor's position. It doesn't provide one for the city manager, so we could provide that if it ever had another signing.
Good question. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. All in favor? Carried. 6.3.1, Saskatchewan Municipal Revenue Sharing.
Thank you, Your Worship, to present Saskatchewan Municipal Revenue Sharing eligibility requirements for 2020 and 2021. I'll ask the Chief Financial Officer to present.
Good afternoon, Council. The Saskatchewan Ministry of Government Relations is implementing a new process to ensure that municipalities are in compliance before issuing their municipal revenue sharing grant. The implications will not take into effect until 2021, but this year is a test year. So the items that are required are audited financial statements, waterworks reporting, education property tax in good standing, council procedural bylaw, employee code of conduct, public disclosure statements. Moving forward, all Saskatchewan municipalities will be required to submit it on an annual basis online by January 15th, along with the council resolution confirming that their municipality meets all 6 eligibility requirements. And so you will see the attachment where it outlines the areas that we have to indicate to them. It's an online form, and so I've attached what I'm prepared to submit. So you will see on the next slide the answers to my responses, and the ones that we get, we've met all the requirements except for the last one, and because we are a bit of an anomaly being a border city. We meet the requirements of our legislation, but they do not give us an option to say anything but yes or no. So I had to say no and then explain it in the note. And when I spoke to the ministry, they said that they will take that into account on their next year's online form. I suspect will get included in the blue underscores there as the Lloydminster Charter, and then we'll be able to say that we meet all the requirements, but as of today, we meet all the requirements that we are legislatively required to do. So that gives us back to our options, which are to pass a resolution, Council for the City of Lloydminster declare that the city is compliant with all 6 eligibility requirements for the Saskatchewan Municipal Revenue Sharing Grant in reference to the Lloydminster Charter, or the Council for the City of Lloydminster requests further information.
Yeah. So what funds do we currently get under this sort of revenue sharing?
We receive...
We'd be in full compliance going forward and ready for 2021. Okay. Councilor Turner?
Thank you, Your Worship. As far as this goes, like, I actually think it's a great idea as far as getting compliance with a lot of the different municipalities, especially when you get ones of various sizes, to comply with these things in order to get their funding, because a lot of them are pretty basic. My one area, I guess, is not required within our charter, but, you know, it's something we should consider, within the next little while, is whether or not we do require elected officials to do a public disclosure statement. It's not a big deal in a way. It's just ensuring that either the elected official or their spouse has declared their holdings in any particular companies or anything like that, and where their relationships are. And from a transparency point of view, when we talk about pecuniary interests and everything, you know, I think it just really makes it clear as to where an individual elected official stands and whether or not a potential pecuniary interest could exist in a certain area. So it's, you know, the fact that everyone in Saskatchewan's doing it is probably because it is a best practice and it's something worth our while. That's all.
Director Abel?
So the Lloydminster Charter does provide a provision in section 132 for a public disclosure statement, but it says may. Previous councils have not taken that step. As part of the election cycle piece in June, we'll bring that item forward, and that will be one of the council's choices, whether they'd like a public disclosure statement or not. Normally, we package it in that area because if it is adopted by a council as part of a bylaw, it is one of the few items, if not complied with, could have a councillor disqualified. So that's why we package it in that type of area.
Okay.
Councillor Baker?
Thank you, Your Worship. This particular subject's been on the table before. Excuse me. And I think it's a terrible thing. I can tell you from past conversations with many people that would let their name stand for council, said, we're not interested in that. Nobody's business next door what my business is doing and not doing. And I'm not interested in running for council and telling everybody whether I own 6 pigs or 6 high-rises. That's my business. And I'm there to do a job if I run according to the rules of City Council. And that's the end of it. What's happening in Canada, like so many countries, it's being dictated from the top down. Everything that's happening is being dictated. Everything from the income tax change that was made came down from the federal government. Now the disclosure clause, but we get no rights with it. The federal government, you don't think that their staff has tax-free benefits? Do you think they don't have tax allowances? But they just keep downloading and beating up on our municipalities. As late as a week ago, I just read where there's people, municipalities or counties within this country backing out of FCM because of the lack of support for the FCM members. And they spend all their time supporting the federal government. It goes on every day. It goes on every day. When this issue with the tax-free allowance, do you know how much money that's cost municipalities in Canada combined? I have no idea, but it's millions. And that's a download from the federal government and the tax department. It goes on every day. What have we got FCM there for? What are they doing for us? All I hear is the environment and what's good for Ottawa. It's not what's good for the municipality. I read those silly magazines every week, and I get to a point I want to throw them in the garbage can. Because they're so focused on one thing. It's keeping the Prime Minister and his crew happy. I won't be here when this happens. But you guys would do yourself a favor if you say no way, because you're going to, in my mind, right or wrong, there's people that are just not going to run for City Council because they're not going to tell them all their personal business and under disclosure clauses just so they can sit here and do what you and I do. So take it for what it's worth. That's how I feel, and certainly many like me. And you can check that out when you go to SUMA next month. Talk to some of your friends. See how they feel about it. See if they think this is a good idea. See if FCM servicing is well. See if the federal government's treating us well. See if the provinces are downloading on us properly. See what you think, and then you form your opinion. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and I think it's probably worthwhile having a discussion, and let's do that when we're setting up for the next election. Certainly, I know there are people that in the past have taken advantage of their position and when they have them disclosed and to the benefit of their inside knowledge. And it's the actions of few that cause us to have to create these rules. If everybody was honest, we wouldn't need speed signs, we wouldn't need any of this stuff out there. The reality is there are people that take advantage of those opportunities, and I think there are intended and unintended outcomes, and you've alluded to some of the unintended ones that put people on a different spot. But I think that discussion should be held at a later date once we come to the point where we have to clarify whether we want to pursue that further or not. Any other discussion relative to the motion?
I'll make a motion.
Councilor Rowe?
That council approve the following, that council for the city of Lloydminster declare that all 6 eligibility requirements for the Saskatchewan Municipal Revenue Sharing Grant have been completed.
Councilor Fagin, second. Any further questions? Call for the motion. All in favor? Carried. 6.7, bylaws.
Thank you, Your Worship. For bylaw 04-2020, supplementary assessment of improvements bylaw, I'll ask Scott Perry to come forward and present.
Good afternoon again. Recommendations that council grant first reading to bylaw number 04-2020, supplementary assessment of improvement bylaw. Council is required by the Lloydminster Charter to annually authorize supplementary assessments. To impose a tax on properties that have been substantially completed or further constructed during the current year, which are not fully captured in the current property assessment. Administration is requesting direction from council to pass the supplementary assessment bylaw. This supplementary assessment will be used to adjust the current tax levy section. Section 261 of the Lloydminster Charter states, if the city wishes to require the preparation of supplementary assessments for improvements, council must pass the supplementary assessment bylaw authorizing the assessments to be prepared for the purpose of imposing a tax under Part 10 of the same year. Option 1 is the council grant first reading to bylaw number 04-2020. Option 2, council not grant first reading to bylaw number 04-2020, for council direct administration to bring back further information. I'll pass back to you, Your Worship, for questions or comments.
Thank you. Questions from council members? I'll start off, I guess, the only question I had in looking at the bylaw was that, what are the triggers to that say, all right, so what does substantial completion look like? And are builders aware that what that trigger looks like? Are they notified? And are there surprises or no surprises? Or what's that process look like?
Typically, what it is that properties that are on the assessment roll as of December 31st that are under construction, they get completed and get their occupancy permit sometime in 2020 in this instance. So once they have that occupancy permit in place, we would go in and do a supplementary assessment on the property, and they would be billed for that portion of the year the property is complete.
So it's the occupancy permit that triggers that process?
Typically, yeah.
Okay. Are there other examples beyond that?
Well, if for some reason there wasn't an occupancy issued by the city and it was fully complete and lived in or being occupied, then we would generate an assessment regardless.
Okay. How has this changed from prior one, or did we have one?
It's the same every year. It's just legislative requirements to be done every year by council. Council's choice is to either pass a bylaw to do supplementary assessments or not to, basically.
Okay, thank you. Questions from council? Look for someone to make a motion. Councilor Fagin?
The council grant first reading to bylaw number 04-2020, the supplementary assessment of improvements bylaw.
Second. Councilor Miller? Any final questions? Call the question. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Scott.
6.7.2, bylaw number 03-2020, proposed land use bylaw amendment.
Item 02-2020.
All right, let's go back.
Okay.
I seem to want to jump ahead here. Let's do that one. 2020, that's a good spot. 02.
6.7.2, proposed municipal development plan amendment, Hill Industrial, Western Land Exchange, Lawson Township, and come forward.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're here to ask
council to grant first reading to bylaw 02/2020 being a bylaw to amend map 2 future land use concept in bylaw 1/2013. In order to facilitate the land exchange between the City of Lloydminster and Husky Midstream General Partnership and Husky Oil Operations Limited, a subdivision must occur. Prior to the subdivision of land, all land within the newly created parcel must be of the same future land use as per the MDP and district within the land use bylaw. Bylaw 2 will align the future land use in the MDP. Administration has been working since November to fulfill the conditions associated to these. Referrals were distributed and closed on December 20th. Through the referral period, one conversation was had with an adjacent landowner, however, no formal comments were received in writing. Bylaw 2/2020 and 3/2020 must be approved concurrently.
Any questions from council? Council.
I'm just curious, the conversation that was handled perfectly by our staff, and that's why there was no written concern brought forward, or did we answer those concerns and that's why it's good, or they just didn't do it?
I think he just didn't do it. I anticipated receiving a letter. He pretty much just wanted to know how the rights of this land were changing, what they could do on it in the future. Realistically, the rights of the land aren't changing. We are just, since we're giving them a little bit of a wider parcel, we are just extending the exact same land use and district that applies there, as well as on the west side of the road. So all the landowners in the same area have the exact same rights.
Thank you.
So there are no other questions? All the questions? Oh, sorry, Councilor Baker?
Thank you, Bruce. I've been asked a couple times, well, if this goes ahead, what's going to be built there? That's the first question. Because they know it's Husky's in the refining business. And right across the road is a lot of businesses. And I said, I really can't tell you. But I know there are public hearings. But I just thought I would bring that up. But to the west of 62nd, there's all kinds of businesses. But when somebody says they're going to move the refinery, that's perception, maybe. Further west, then how close is it going to be my business? That's just a question. And I said, I can't answer those questions. They'll have to be answered in this forum, and by administration, and by the people that are receiving the land, Husky Oil. Because if there is conditions required for the transfer, that if there are conditions required to satisfy the landowners to the west and maybe to the south, I don't know. I don't know if any of them need resettlement. That should be done before this is finalized. Because I think it's critical. And I think it's critical we know what's going to go there before we zone it. Now, is it medium? Pardon me, I forgot to check. Medium or heavy?
That'll get into the bylaw 3, but it will be medium industrial.
Medium? And it's a little different use. But those questions might have to be answered before we move forward with the final reading of this. And it might have to be talked about at the public hearing. I don't know, but I just bring that up to you. Thank you.
Are there any indications again from Husky relative to their use, or is that even a question we can ask them?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. That's something we had talked with Husky, and all indications for meetings I've had with them is they're looking to secure this land for future expansion of potential offices, laid out sites, storage yards, those types of things. There was never ever any indication that the refinery was going to expand into the area. And in fact, one of the rationales with regards to this area being looked at with regards to Husky expansion is the close proximity to the refinery, and that they better understand the requirements for building any future developments if they do intend to do that. My understanding is there's no immediate future development permit coming forward for actual any development. They're going to utilize it for storage and laid out sites for the future. And once development does occur on that, there's a process that they would apply for the development permit to build permits, and they would follow those planning procedures to do so.
Just to follow up if I may, Your Worship, I don't know if we need a condition on the trade, but 10 years later, 20 years, people forget what was said, and things happen. And sometimes you might ask our city manager if he would look into that, see whether he thinks we should go further with some kind of condition on what can be developed that close to the west. Thank you.
So with the conditions, in essence, though, we zone it in a particular way, that really is the condition unless it was in there. So unless they come back and rezone it, they can't build the industrial in it.
Well, if it's zone medium density, they can build within the medium zone, density zone, I believe, unless there's no condition.
So what can they build? Can they expand the refinery into medium density?
So we have to accept my apologies, I didn't bring my bylaw, but it is correct that once they are medium density industrial, they can apply for DPs with anything within the permitted or discretionary uses of that district. Whatever that district looks at the time of the day, that district could change from here to 20 years from now. Also right now, you can kind of see on the east side where it is parceled out, it is already medium industrial. The only land we are adding to medium industrial is the little sliver on the west.
Councilor Carson.
Thank you, Your Worship. This may be a goofy question, but as far as the bylaw we're amending, because maybe I'm wrong on this, but we normally make amendments to a different land use bylaw than this one, don't we? And this is a future land use concept, no area structure plan. So as far as the process, give me a quick review.
Okay, thank you for your question. So in this case, there are two bylaws we need to amend. We need to amend our MDP, which is the city's vision. Future land uses in that document are very high level. They're limited to parks and open space, commercial, industrial, institutional. In this instant, that little sliver of land to the west that I'm speaking of is public utility. It's just a reserve land held by the municipality. So that's the first one we need to amend, and we need to align that with industrial. Once that's industrial in our MDP, we can follow suit in the city's land use bylaw and change that to industrial as well. That's public utility right now to industrial. They're layered documents that need to continue to align.
Perfect. Thank you.
So in here, it's important to keep the focus on the strip of land and not the whole entire piece, because that's really the modification.
That's the modification
Yeah.
today, yes.
Other questions? If not,
I'll make the motion.
thank you, Councilor Brown.
That council grant first reading to bylaw number 02-2020, being a bylaw to amend approximately 2.722 hectares of parts of southeast quarter, section 11, township 50, range 1, west of 4th Meridian, within southeast quarter, section 11, township 50, range 1, west of 4th Meridian on map 2, future land use concept and bylaw number 01-2013 to industrial. In addition, the council established a public hearing to be held at City Hall, council chambers during the regular council meeting on February 10th, 2020 at 2 p.m.
Thank you. Seconder? Councilor Carson? Any further questions? Did you want to vote on this? Call the question. All in favor? Carried. 6.7.3. You are back on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're here to ask council to grant first reading to bylaw 3, 2020, being a bylaw to amend land use map in part 4 of bylaw 5, 2016. This again is to follow suit with bylaw number 2. Bylaw number 3 will align the future land, or the district, within the land use bylaw. Again, we have been working to fulfill the requirements, and still we have only had one landowner reach out to us and speak to us about the bylaw. I was just provided a copy of the land use bylaw speaking to specifically M2, the medium density industrial. The refinery could have been approved under an old bylaw, but for the most part, the major uses here talk about utility services, temporary storage, industrial storage, industrial uses general. So at what time they apply for a DP, they would be required to comply with these regulations. Refinery is not a listed use here.
Thank you for that clarification. Any questions? Not, look for someone to make a motion. Councilor Fagin?
Thank you.
That council grant first reading to bylaw 03-2020, being a bylaw to amend approximately 2.722 hectare, a part of southeast quarter, section 11, township 50, range 01, west of the 4th meridian within southeast quarter, section 11, township 50, range 0.01, west of the 4th meridian on land use map, being part of 4 to bylaw number 5-2016 to 12, medium industrial district. In addition, that council will establish a public hearing to be held at City Hall council chambers during the regular council meeting on February 10th, 2020 at 2 p.m.
Okay. So modification, it should be I2 instead of 1-2 there on number 5-26. Okay, just to clarify.
Yeah.
Second. Councilor Tristan. Any questions before I call Councilor Baker?
Thank you, Roger. Before I question, it's just a response for the benefit of those that don't know. There, in our long-term plan for capital projects includes a dedicated water line from the water treatment plant to the West End Reservoir. And when that reservoir was built, and my memory may or may not be serving correctly, and I've talked to the city manager and Director Don with it, about the issue, that we set aside a public utility right away on the east side of 62nd to accommodate that big water line that has to go down there. And I'm very pleased to hear that that was looked into by administration, engineering, and I'm sure Terry knows what's going on there. But I think that's critical for any subdivision, that you look at all those long-term utility right-of-ways, because you get boxed in. And the point is, example, and this may be extreme, when they built the Anthony Henday Highway in Edmonton, a couple of ministers from the provincial government said you wouldn't believe how much land we had to buy back that we virtually gave away in the last 30 years. And we had to buy back with gold. So some of your long-range projects that might be 20 years away or 10 years ago have to play a part in any of these moves you make. And I'm just suggesting, and I know you know, I'm just suggesting, look ahead, because it could cost you a lot of bucks and you may not get the land back. And if you look at 50th Avenue West, all the way over to the Husky Refinery area, where would you bring the pipeline south, other than down that corridor? And I really appreciate Don and Adam's manager for being on top of that, because it's really critical. It's not just the parcel we're talking about, it's the long-term effect on other major projects. And that line that was dedicated 15 years ago was described as being essential for the longevity of the West End water reservoir, for pressure and all these other things that you need. And I just remind you of that. Hopefully it was appropriate, Your Worship, but it's a good thing to remember for the history. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Baker. It's good to know our staff are on it and are keeping a close eye on it.
Yeah, when we established the parcel, that's something we had discussed with our engineering department. If you look at the utility right away along 62, on the south portion of where the red hash line is, we're matching that corridor. Those lands south of, which would be 52 or 56th Street, they're already established and set as corridor. So the addition, or the corridor has been matched kind of the entire way 62nd Street. My understanding the last time we were looking at the West End Reservoir dedicated line, there were multiple routes that were being considered. 62nd Street was one of them, 70th Street was another one, or 70th Avenue, 62nd Avenue were both corridors that were being looked at said. So we do feel that the parcel is sized properly and that there is future corridor for road expansion and utilities if needed.
Good, thank you for that. Any other questions? We can call the question. If not, for the vote, all in favor? Motion carried. Number 7, correspondence. Nothing. Mayor, council reports. Any councilors want to report? Having to report? Any other matters? Inquiries from the media?
Thank you, Your Worship. Today we have an interview request for yourself, Deputy Mayor Radcliffe, and Councilor Torsen.
Thank you. Look for a motion to recess. Councilor Buckingham, second? Or do we need a second on that? Councilor Monroe? All in favor? Carried. We're now in recess.